So last night I sat down and watched the movie Weapons for the first time, and I've seen a lot of things online saying it's the best movie of the year, it's the best horror movie of the century, it's the best horror movie ever. I've heard. I actually saw something yesterday, I think last night at some point, and it was saying Weapons is the best horror movie ever, and it's not the best horror movie ever. Is it the best horror movie of this year? In my opinion, I think it stands a chance. I'm gonna give the movie a solid 8, 8.5 out of 10. What should I give it? What should I give it? What should I give it? I'll give it an 8.5 out of 10. I think it's a very good movie. Though I've not got any complaints about the movie, other than the fact that they sprinkled some comedy in there, which I don't really like for horror movies. I'll get more into that later. So, just to give you the quick rundown, Weapons is a movie made by, what's the guy's name? Zach Kreger, that's it, who also made the horror movie Barbarian, which I'm a big fan of. I really like that movie. So, Weapons is pretty much about these 17 children who go missing from they go missing from a classroom, but they go missing from the world. Like, they're unfound, no one can find them, they're gone. And they were all in the same classroom, but there was another boy in the classroom called Alex, and he didn't go missing. So, we'll touch more on that later. So, 17 kids from the same classroom in the same school go missing. The reason everyone finds out they went missing is because there are ring cameras on people's houses, and at 2:17 one night, all of the kids got out of bed, went downstairs, and ran out the door, and you could see them on the ring cameras running out the door. They were doing like this, running like this. It was sort of a T-pose mixed with a Naruto run, and they would just run. And then they would just run into the darkness, and they would go off the ring cameras. So a lot of the parents obviously very distraught. And this is where we start to meet all of the main characters. So you've got Justine, who was the teacher of that classroom. You've got Archer, who is the father of one of the kids from the classroom. And you have Marcus, who I believe is like the principal of the school, who's played by Benedict Wong, who most of you would know from Doctor Strange, probably. He played Wong in Doctor Strange. So they hold this kind of meeting in the school hall one night, and it's all the parents and some of the teachers and obviously the principal and stuff like that. And one of the parents, Archer, who is played by Josh Brolin, who most of you probably know as Thanos, or from the Goonies years ago. He stands up and he's like, I want her to speak. She must know where the kids are because the kids went missing and they were part of her classroom, referring to Justine, played by Julia Gardner. So I was confused by this point already because I don't know why they would think she had something to do with 17 kids going missing, especially the fact being that it was 2:17 one night and the kids willingly just got out of bed and ran out their house. So I don't know if they thought she was doing some voodoo rituals to force the kids to leave their houses at 2:17 a.m. I have no idea, but for some reason all the parents flip out and they all think she's got something to do with it. So she ends up going home and she goes into her house and you hear a bunch of knocking on the doors and she opens it up. No one there. Must be Ding Dong Ditch from that one kid, Alex, who survived. Close the door. She walks away. Then there's even more banging. She opens it and someone has wrote witch on her car. In red paint, they've wrote the word witch. So the way this movie works is you will have one character on screen pretty much for the entire time, and you'll go through what they do in like a day. For example, you'll go through their day. As we started with Justine, the teacher of the classroom, and her day pretty much just consisted of meeting up with this police officer who's called Paul, who I would guess she used to be with based off of how it looks, and she goes to a bar with them and they get drunk together and whatever. And then where does their story end off? Oh yeah, so Justine wants answers as much as any of the parents for why these kids went missing, and she keeps asking Marcus or Benedict Wong if she can have some time alone with this Alex kid so she can talk to him pretty much and try and find out what he knows, if he knows anything. Again, I don't understand why she would think he knows stuff, but it's besides the point. So Marcus doesn't let her. He says the kid's just as traumatized as you are. All his classmates have gone missing. Leave the kid alone. And rather than just doing that, she stalks the kid. I mean, she literally stalks the kid. She follows him after school, or she watches him come out of school, and then as he's walking away from school, he's walking down his street, she's walking behind him, and then he eventually runs into his house, where then she then goes and starts spying on the house, like peeking through the windows and stuff. So she goes around to the back of the house. She peeks through one of the windows. They've got newspaper and stuff all over them, as if they're hiding something. Ooh, we'll get into that later. And she peeks in the window, and she sees two people sitting on the couch, which they look dead. They look like zombies. She gets startled, runs back to her car, and she sits in her car all night. Like, she's there. I don't know if she's hoping he comes out, or if she's going to wait till morning. I don't know, but nonetheless, she's waiting in her car for something. She ends up falling asleep. It's late one night. She ends up falling asleep. And the door opens. Not her car door. The house door opens. And this woman comes out walking like she's just been electrocuted. And she's got scissors in her hands. And she walks up to the window. And this is where the comedy kind of starts to come into the movie. So she walks up to the window. And she's standing at the window watching Justine sleep. And she's like this. She's like this. And then she walks away. And you're like, okay, that was strange. But then the horror comes back into it, because the door opens, the back door of the car opens, and then it closes and you can see the car kind of move, and you're like, oh shit, this woman's just got in the car. And then you can slowly see the pair of scissors come into frame next to Justine's face, and you're like, oh my god, what's going to happen here? And then she cuts some of her hair off and runs back in the house. And it's like, oh, they built up this kind of horror scene. There's a woman, crazy woman who we thought was dead, but she's not dead, and she's got a pair of scissors, and she's in this woman's car, but it turns out she's just giving her a haircut. So that's kind of where the comedy starts to sprinkle in, and that's the end of Justine's story. So then what happens is, and I think this was very smart how they done it, the movie kind of goes back in time, and then we're looking at it from a different character's point of view. Now we're looking at it from Archer's point of view, who is the father, played by Josh Brolin, who his son Matthew is one of the kids who went missing. So now we're looking at everything from Archer's point of view. So he wakes up one morning, and he is one of the parents who are putting his heart and soul into trying to find his kid. So he's going and talking to the police, trying to get information from the police. He is having dreams about his kid, which let's touch on this really quickly. So he starts having this dream, and he wakes up in his dream, and he gets out of bed, and he turns around, and he can see his body in bed. He can see himself sleeping. And what ends up happening is you start hearing footsteps, so he goes out to the hall. Then you hear more footsteps on the stairs, so he goes down the stairs. Then you see the door open, so he runs over to the door. And then in the distance, you can see his child, Matthew, running away. So he obviously does what any parent would do, and he follows the child. And he appears at this house. It's a very big house, and he watches his son run into the house. And then a massive machine gun, or like AK or something, I don't remember what gun it was, appears above the house in the sky, and it's got the time 2:17 on it, which is when the kids ran away, and then it disappears. I don't know why there was a AK floating above the house with the time 2:17. I know the time 2:17 obviously is when the kids went missing, but I don't know why there was an AK. Nonetheless, he kind of just brushes it off like, oh, that's peculiar, I've never seen that before. He then runs in the house, he's looking for his kid, and he finds his kid lying in bed. And he's like giving him this emotional speech. Where are you? You need to tell me where you are. Oh, I miss you. I'm trying to find you. And then he opens his eyes, and there's like this creepy old woman called Gladys. And she's got like this kind of Pennywise clown looking hair. It's like bright orange. She's got this really thick red lipstick on. Her makeup's done terribly. She's quite pale. And she's sitting there like this in the bed. And that's when he wakes up. And then they sprinkle another little bit of comedy in there where he screams, what the fuck, after he wakes up. Like, he sits up and he's sitting there and he's like, what the fuck? And that's kind of like, listen, I've not got a problem with comedy. And that part was pretty funny when he just woke up and shouted, what the fuck, in his bed. But it's a horror movie. I want to be more scared than laughing. I feel like I laughed more throughout this movie than got scared. But anyway, he then, his mind is just, after this dream, even more dedicated to finding his son. So he gets this like map of the neighborhood, and he finds his house, and then he tracks his house in the same direction his kid was running, and it leads to some sort of tower, was that a water tower? What was it? So it was some sort of like electrical tower or something like that. And then he decides, okay, let me go and ask another family if I can see their ring footage, so I can see if their daughter ran the same direction, which he does. And he initially asks the mother, because she's the only one in the house, and she says no for some reason, which I was looking at my mum and my dad, and I was like, why the hell would she say no? Why wouldn't she want him to try and find her daughter? I thought that was strange personally. So he waits on the wife's husband to get home, the dad of the kid who went missing. And it's Justin Long, who is one of my favourite actors. He was in Barbarian, which was a movie who, as I mentioned, Zach Cregger also directed. He was in the Jeepers Creepers movie, the original one. He played what was his name? Daryl or something? Was that his name? Darius. So I thought that was cool, just a little Justin Long sprinkle in there, little cameo. So he watches their footage, and I don't know what this meant, but he watches the footage, and as the daughter on the footage steps on one of the tiles outside, like on the path, he's like, stop the footage. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And he counts that it's the 7th tile she stood on. So then he goes outside and he counts 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and he puts a flag on the 7th tile, which I thought was strange because I don't know why he did that, but nonetheless he did. And then he goes back home to his map and he draws a circle around their house, finds their house, and then draws the same line, and it leads to the same tower. So he's by this point gathered that all the children were running to the same spot, which is this tower, for what he thought. So he puts a circle around it and he's like, that's where they are, they're at the tower, I figured it out, I've cracked the case. And then he's driving somewhere. I think he might have done that map thing in their house, and then he was driving home. I think that's what it was. And as he's driving home, he sees Justine driving her car into this like gas station, and we know it's her car because it says Witch on the side of it, which it turns out Josh Brolin is the one that wrote Witch on the car. I guess because he hated her and he thought she had something to do with his kid's disappearance, so he used some red paint to write Witch on the side of her car. So he knew it was her car. He makes a kind of U-turn and he follows her into the gas station and he confronts her and he's like, oh, I need to talk to you. We need to discuss this. And she's like, oh no, we don't need to. I already know. You and all the other parents and everyone in the town thinks I'm the bad guy. Blah, blah, blah. They're talking back and forth. And then Justine kind of looks to the side and she's kind of like shocked and scared. And you see this person running towards her like this, just how all the kids were running. And it turns out it's Marcus. And this guy looks crazy. Like his eyes are popping out of his head. He's got blood on his face. He's got this black stuff all over his mouth and his face. And he pushes Archer out the way and he lunges onto Justine and he's choking her. Archer gets up and he like is trying to grab Marcus off, and Marcus does one of these and he knocks Archer over again. And Justine starts crawling under the car. Marcus follows after her and she runs into this gas station. She runs into the store. Archer then gets back up, and as Marcus is crawling out from under the car, he kicks him in the stomach. He's just pretty much trying to say, listen, you need to relax. Stop following Justine. Stop following this crazy woman. Which doesn't work. Marcus is like a homing missile. He is locked onto Justine as if his life depended on it. If he didn't catch her, he would explode. So him and Archer then get into a little scuffle, and that's where Archer's story ends. Now I'm just going to brush past the next two stories that we get into, because they're kind of just lead-ups to the two characters that we then follow becoming possessed, essentially, or becoming bad guys. Same as Marcus. So I'm just going to brush past them real quick. One of them is called Paul, who is the police officer we mentioned in Justine's story. And he's on duty, and he notices this crackhead to what looks like the crackhead is trying to break into a building. So he's like, hey, stop there. Get off that building. And then the crackhead starts running away. So, as any police officer would do, Paul then drives, and he's following this crackhead. And he ends up catching up to him, and he's patting him down, and he's got my handcuffs, and he's like, is there anything that's going to poke me, stab me, or stick me in your pockets, blah, blah, blah. And the crackhead's like, no, man, there's nothing. Then he sticks his hand in his pocket, and he gets pricked by a syringe. And he kind of just like lashes out, and he just punches the crackhead. Crackhead gets knocked out. After knocking the crackhead out, he wakes him up, and he's like, listen, you better not tell anyone about this, okay? If I see you back around here, you're going to get worse than just a punch to the face. Pretty much just threatening him. So Paul goes back to the station, blah, 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 whatever. And then as he comes out, he sees the crackhead walking towards the station. And he's like, hey, I told you not to come back here. Get out of here. And then the crackhead runs away, and Paul starts chasing the crackhead. And that's where Paul's story ends. Then the next story is the crackhead. So we follow through the crackhead. It starts with him sitting in his tent in the forest somewhere, and he's trying to smoke out of this bong, but it looks like he's not really got anything in it, because he just goes and it's empty. And he's got all these syringes around him and stuff. And it just follows a crackhead's life, pretty much. He's going around, he's trying to open every car door, he's trying to get into all the cars, trying to see if there's anything that he can find, so he can then go and sell it, which one of the cars actually does open, and he finds this little girl's like iPad and headphones, and he takes it to some guy, and he's like, how much can I get for this? And the guy's like, nothing, I don't want it. So then we merge the two stories together. We then follow the crackhead to the building that he was trying to break into. Then, just from a different point of view, a different perspective, we see Paul in the police in the police car. Story, he's like, get away from that building. And then we go through the little chase scene again. And after the chase scene, obviously Paul goes on his way back to the station. The crackhead, what's the crackhead's name? Can I find it on here? Is it not? Alright, I don't know what the crackhead's name was. I don't remember. Alright, we'll just call him Cracky. So Cracky then is walking around and he's got this big, red eye. And where does he go? God, it's so difficult to remember because there's like so many stories that tie in together. Okay, it was late. That's what it was. After this point, he'd been walking around for a while. It was raining. It was getting dark. And he finds this house. And he breaks into this house. And he climbs up this like ladder at the back and through a window. And it turns out the house he broke into is Alex's house, the little boy who didn't go missing. And Cracky is walking around the house and he like eats some food he finds and he takes some stuff and he ends up going downstairs into the living room and finding this like old Game Boy or something by the looks of it. But he turns around and the two parents of Alex are still sitting there. You remember from when Justine was spying and she saw them through the window? They're still sitting there just looking lifeless. So pretty much what ends up happening here is he takes the thing and he kind of just ignores them. He's like, okay, they're not moving, they're not really affected by the fact I'm here, so I'll just leave them. And he starts stealing stuff, and as he's leaving the house, he notices this door, and he opens it and turns the light on, and it leads into the basement. So he slowly starts going down, and he looks, and all 17 kids are standing in the basement. He found all 17 of the kids, and they are standing in the basement just like this, just doing nothing. They're just standing there. So he freaks out, he runs out the basement, slams the door behind him, he pushes this thing in front of the door, and then the parents stand up and they start like walking towards him like zombies, literally walking towards him like Frankenstein. And he runs out the house and he goes and he doesn't seem too affected by it. I'm pretty sure he goes back to his tent and takes some sort of drug. And then he goes and tries to sell all the items that he stole from their house. And I think he gets like $100 or something. But while he's selling the items, he sees a poster on the back wall. And it's pretty much saying, if you find the 17 kids, you get a $50,000 reward. It's one of those missing posters. And he's like, holy shit, I know where they are. What happened? Why did my screen just go half the size? I'll forget it. It'll be alright. Anyway, he's like, oh my god, $50,000. I know where these kids are. That's an easy 50 grand. But because he's on drugs, he sounds really suspicious. He sounds like a junkie when he's on the call with the police. So he's like, yeah, I found these 17 kids somewhere. They were in some sort of basement. They were all standing there. It looked like they were possessed or something. What about that? How do I get that $50,000? So he ends up walking to the police station. And then this is where the story ties in of Paul seeing him walking towards the police station, if that makes sense. So he's walking towards the police station. Paul's coming out of the police station. And Paul's like, hey, get back here. They both start running. And the crackhead, Cracky, ends up running into the forest. And while he's in the forest, he comes across Gladys, which is the old woman that Archer saw in his dream. Which, I forgot to mention, Justine also saw her in her dream. She, like, woke up and she, like, looked at the roof and Gladys was on the roof. It looked pretty creepy, I'll be honest. So, looks like everyone's starting to see this Gladys woman. So, Cracky sees the Gladys woman in the forest and she's, like, waving at him. And he runs away and he's hiding in his tent and he's zipped it down. Or zipped it up, whatever. And he thinks Gladys is opening the tent because you can see someone in front of the tent and they're slowly starting to open it. So he's got a bunch of these syringes in his hand and he's waiting and he's waiting. And as it comes up, he just lunges towards, pokes the syringes through the tent, or through the opening of the tent. And it turns out it was Paul, the police officer. So Paul's been now stabbed. So what then ends up happening is Paul throws Cracky into the police car and he's like, you're going to jail. And the Cracky's like, no, I know where the kids are. You have to believe me. I know where these 17 kids are. So he explains the same thing to Paul. They're in this house. I can show you the house. So they end up going to the house. Cracky is left in the back of the car while Paul goes to investigate the house. So he goes up and the door opens and Paul goes in and the door closes behind him. And then it cuts to nighttime. It's went from like midday time here to nighttime. And Paul is in the house obviously for a long time. It's been hours by the looks of it. And the door opens and he ends up walking out the house. And the crackhead's like, oh god, finally. But then Paul like picks up the pace and starts going towards the car, and he flings the back of the car door open, and he starts dragging the crackhead out of the car, and he starts dragging him into the house. And that's where the crackhead story cuts off. Now, the situations we have are Paul and the crackhead have now been dragged into the house where all the missing kids are, and they're both, as we find out near the end of the movie, they're both possessed. I'll just spoil it for you. They're both possessed. Something has happened to them, and they have both turned evil. We also have Archer and Justine, who are at a gas station battling Marcus, who's also been possessed, which we're now going to get into Marcus's story. So it starts with Marcus on the phone to Justine. I believe they're talking about Alex. Justine is like, I want to have a talk with Alex, blah, blah, blah. And they come to the agreement that Marcus, who's, again, I'll just remind you, played by Benedict Wong, the principal of the school, they come to this agreement that Justine will be able to have a meeting with Alex and his parents, right? So that's kind of the moral of where we go from here. So Marcus is then in his office at school, he's working away, and a woman comes in and she's like, your 2 o'clock's here, and he's like, right, send them in. And lo and behold, shock, shock, it's Gladys. He thought it would be Alex's parents, but it's Gladys. And Gladys comes in, she's got the weird hair, and her makeup's a little bit tidier, you know, she looks more human than, like, messed up weird lady. So she comes in and she sits down, and Marcus is like, so you're not his legal guardian? And Gladys is like, oh no, I'm his auntie. I'm staying with him while his parents are ill. That's her excuse. But we know, or well, I guess we don't know, but I know, so I'll just tell you. His parents are possessed as well. So Gladys turns out to be this evil, like, witchcraft wizard lady who can possess people and pretty much make them attack whoever they want. Hence the name of the movie, Weapons. She uses these people as weapons. That's how the movie got its name. So Marcus is like, listen, I can't really help you here. You know, I need his legal guardians to talk with me so we can get Justine in, the teacher, and then they can have a meeting. And Gladys is like, oh, that's unfortunate. And she looks to her right and she sees these like ribbons, and they belong to Marcus, hence why they're in his office. Which you don't really understand why she's looking at them, but then later in Marcus's story, he's sitting at house with, I believe it's his husband or his boyfriend, and he's sitting in his house and he's eating some stuff, and the doorbell goes, and he's like, or his husband's like, that's strange, wonder who that could be. So Marcus gets up, opens the door, and it's Gladys. And she's all out of breath, she's panting, she's like, oh my god, I just missed the bus, I feel like I'm going to pass out, please let me in your house. And Marcus is like, you know, I don't think it's a great time where we're in the middle of something, when all they were doing was watching TV and eating hot dogs and snacks and stuff. But his husband then comes up to the door and he's like, oh my goodness, of course you can come into the house, come on in, come on in. So all three of them go into the kitchen, and she's like, please, can I have some water? And Marcus's husband, who I also don't know the name of, is like, quick, get her a glass of water. So Marcus goes, and as he's getting the glass out, Gladys goes, oh no, not a glass, a bowl. And this is confusing to not only Marcus and his husband, but the audience too. Why does she want a bowl for her water? What is she, some sort of dog? So that's confusing enough. So Marcus, you know, he has no reason to refuse a bowl of water. So he grabs the bowl, fills it up with water, and gives it to her. And Gladys is like, oh, thank goodness. You haven't called the police yet, have you? So the plan was... Actually, why the hell did she say that? Something to do with Alex. Oh, my God, I remember. I'm so stupid. So they were going to do a welfare check on Alex and his parents. That's the reason they invited... that's the reason Marcus invited his parents into the office. They were going to make sure everything's alright at home, that sort of thing. But then Gladys ended up coming in instead, and that's why he said you need a legal guardian. So I messed that up completely. It had nothing to do with this meeting they were going to have with Justine. It had to do with a welfare check they were going to do. So Gladys then goes in the house and she's like, you haven't contacted authorities yet, have you? As in for this welfare check. And Marcus is like, why? And she pulls out this stick. And she starts wrapping Marcus's ribbons that she stole from his office around the stick. And Marcus is like, are those my ribbons? And she then says it again in more serious tones. She goes, you haven't contacted authorities yet, have you? And Marcus says, no, I haven't. And then Gladys cuts her own hand with the stick and starts rubbing the blood all over the stick. So far she's got a stick with Marcus's ribbons wrapped around it, and a bloody hand that she's rubbing on the stick, and a bowl of water. Audience confused. I was anyway. I was like, what the hell is going on here? So then she pulls out these massive scissors, the same scissors that were used to cut Justine's hair when she was sleeping in her car spying on Alex. So she's like, oh, please grab me that napkin for my blood. So Marcus's husband then grabs the towel or whatever it was, and as he's taking it over to her, she snips some of his hair off. And he's like, oh my goodness, she snipped my hair off. And she then starts wrapping his hair around the stick as well. So you're thinking, okay, this is strange. She's got a stick that's got Marcus's ribbons on it, and she's putting her blood all over it, and it's got his husband's hair on it. What's going on here? And Marcus is like, okay, this is weird enough for me. I'm calling the police. Grabs the phone, and as he's calling the police, when she's finished with her little magic stick with hair and ribbons and blood all over it, she snaps it, and this like triggers something in Marcus's head, and he just drops the phone, and he kind of starts giving it one of these. He starts vibrating, looking up. I keep messing up because it's like, it's such a confusing movie. No. Why did he start shaking? What made him start shaking? Breaking the stick didn't make him start shaking. I apologize. Breaking the stick. Forget the whole shaking thing. Something happens and he starts shake. Oh my god, I remember it. Sorry, I'm stupid. I know. I'm weird, pretty much. So I believe what happens is she rung this bell, which then made Marcus start shaking. Or she snapped the stick. One of the two. Jesus Christ. She either snapped the stick, which made Marcus start shaking, or she rung this little bell, which made him start shaking. Either way, he started shaking. Either way, I believe she rung the bell, he started shaking. She then snapped the stick, and this like set him on this frenzy. And he just like, it's like the missile again. He locks onto his husband, and he runs towards his husband, and he pins him on the ground by the neck, and he's choking him out. And he throws up all this like black liquid, it looks like oil. And he throws all this up in his husband's mouth and face. And then he starts headbutting his husband on the ground. And his husband's dead. He's killing his husband. He's been possessed by freaking evil old Gladys, Pennywise Gladys. And the husband's face is getting destroyed. It's caving in. It looks like a brain, essentially. And then what she does is she drops the broken stick in the water, the water in the bowl, which makes Marcus stop. And he stands up and he's just standing there, and his eyes have like popped out of his head, and his hair is all messed up, and he's got the blood on his face and the black stuff on his mouth. And then Gladys gets Justine's hair that she cut earlier when Justine was sleeping in the car, and she wraps that around the stick, and then she snaps that as well, and that sets Marcus off, and he goes running out the house. And then this ties into when he's running towards her and Archer at the gas station. So you can see all the stories slowly start to tie in together. So not much else goes on in that scene, which I think is pretty unfortunate, because he definitely looked the best in the entire movie, like the eyes popping out and the blood all over him. He looked the coolest in the movie on this part. So we watch kind of the whole him chasing Justine and fighting Archer thing. And then he chases Justine and he follows her into the gas station, and she's trying to go out this back door, but it won't open. So she turns around and she's pretty much just accepted fate at this point. Marcus is running towards her, freaking dead set on her. And just before he gets to her, Archer runs towards him and just gives him one of these like shoulder barges and tackles him into the fridge, the refrigerator, the freezer, whatever it is, at the gas station. Smashes through the glass, water, drinks, some energy drinks, coffee, whatever it is, goes everywhere. And Justine then runs out to her car. Archer, I believe, is knocked out after doing that because he's kind of just lying there. But Marcus is far from knocked out. He's like right back up. So Justine runs out, she jumps into her car, and Marcus runs up to her car, and he starts banging on the windows, and then he ends up punching the window, and it shatters. Justine ends up getting the car started, driving away, and Marcus is like, you know, he's not giving up here. He's possessed. He's still dead set on getting Justine. So he runs towards Justine in that Naruto T-pose run. And Archer then comes out, and his arm's all messed up, he's all cut. And he's like, okay, he's doing the same run as my son. I must get to him and see if he has any answers for me. So then Archer jumps in his car, and he's following closely behind. Justine's kind of off in the distance now. She's drove away quick. Marcus is still running after her. And Archer's like, come here, you son of a bitch, get over here now. And then Marcus ends up getting hit by a car, and his face is all mangled, quite like his husband's, you know. It's all bloody and fleshy and stuff. And that's the end of Marcus, rest in peace. So what ends up happening is Archer and Justine kind of team up, and Archer shows Justine the map that he's been working on, and he's like, I've tracked it, my son went here, their daughter went there, his son, and they all lead to the same place. And then Justine's like, oh my goodness, it's not the tower that's leading towards, it's Alex's house. So that's kind of how they figure it out. It's a little bit underwhelming, but it is what it is. So they go to Alex's house, and as they pull up, they can see Paul's cop car because it's still there after he and the crackhead got possessed. So they're there, and they're like, oh, should we go in? I don't know, the police officer's already in there. And then Paul opens the door, and he comes out, and he gives them one of these. He's like waving them in, and Justine's like, oh my goodness, that's Paul. So they end up trusting Paul, obviously. They go into the house, and there's like these lines of salt all over the place. Wow, I just missed out someone's story completely. Well, I can't be. It's such a long, boring story that it was the most boring part of the movie. That's probably why I've just forgot about it. It's Alex. So we find out Alex has been getting bullied at school, and it turns out, what's the old lady's name? Agatha or something? Agnes or whatever her name is. She then fucking... Oh my god, it's so boring. I'm bored just talking about it. She is like the auntie of Alex. She's like Alex's mum's sister or something like that. And she's like very ill. And she has to stay with them till she gets better. What she ends up doing is possessing Alex's mum and dad. And then she uses Alex to then get the kids to be possessed, essentially. So she sends them to school, and she's like, Alex, you have to get me something from each one of your classmates. So all the classmates have like this little drawer. I don't know if anyone had them in school. It would be like your drawer. You keep all your books and pencils and stuff in there, and they've all got this custom like name tag on them. So Alex goes in and he rips off all the name tags and he takes them home. And Agatha, Agnes, I don't remember. I'll call her freaking... What is her name actually? I could probably find it. I don't know her name. I'll call her freaking Edith. So she does that little ritual where she puts them all on a stick, and then she snaps the stick, and all the kids come running towards the house, and they go in the basement, and that's essentially how the kids got into the basement, right? So now we can go back a bit. Archer and Justine have now went into the house, and there's these like lines of salt randomly around the house, and Edith or Agatha or Agnes, whatever the hell her name is, has warned Alex. She says, Alex, do not step over this salt. Do not step over this line of salt. Don't do it. So what ends up happening is Justine and Archer go into the house, and she sees Paul standing at the other side of the room, and he's still giving her this, like telling her to come over to him. So, you know, she doesn't think anything of it. She walks towards him, and doing so, she steps over a line of salt. And this triggers something in all of the possessed people's brains. So James, you know, the crackhead, he runs and he lunges at Archer. And then Paul starts running towards Justine and lunges at Justine. And then upstairs, Alex steps over the salty line, which he was strictly told not to. And his parents start chasing him. And everyone's, it's this big, fucking hell, I can't speak. It's this big kerfuffle. It's a big scuffle between these two and these two and these three and whatever. So Archer ends up getting control of this crackhead, and he's punching him, and this is where they sprinkle some more comedy into it. The crackhead gets knocked out, and then he wakes back up, and then, oh, punch, and then he gets knocked out again. And then he wakes back up, oh, another punch, he gets knocked out again. And then Archer gets up, and as he's walking away, the crackhead gets back up again, and he punches him again. He's like, okay, surely that guy's done now. Starts walking away. Then the crackhead gets back up and runs towards him, and Archer, I kid you not, picks him up and throws him across the room, over the couch. He almost freaking scraped along the roof. Like he just gained some super strength like the Hulk. He picked the crackhead up and threw him across the room. And he's like, okay, it must be done. And then the crackhead gets up again, and he does it again. Throws him across the room, over the dining room table. And it's kind of something, it's something out of a cartoon at this point. It's like WWE, they're just throwing each other across the room. Eventually, James, the crackhead, gets up, and he tackles Archer again through the door that leads to the basement, and Archer's like got his face pinned down by James's hand, and while he's got his face pinned down, he can see all of the kids in the basement, and he's like, oh my goodness, it's the children. Oh my god, I found them. Justine, in the meantime, crawls under a table into the kitchen, and she like grabs a pan, and she throws it, and it just like bounces off of Paul's face. Another little comedy sprinkle there. And then they're doing this thing where it's like if you're playing tag with your cousin when you're like 6 years old. She's standing on one side of the table doing this. Paul's standing on the other side doing this, trying to determine where she's going to go. Eventually, he ends up just jumping over the table, and he's choking her out. And then they sprinkle even more comedy in there, where she picks up this potato peeler and just starts peeling flesh off of his face just very slowly. Paul's not affected by it. He just hits it away, and he keeps choking her. And what she ends up doing is grabbing his gun, because he's obviously a police officer. So she shoots him in the neck, and blood starts coming out his neck. Nothing happens. So she then shoots him in the head, and then he dies. As soon as she shoots him in the head, he instantly dies. Which we can now say as a fact that the only way you can kill these crazy possessed people are by destroying their brain, essentially, because when Marcus got hit by the car, his face was destroyed, his brains were all over the place, and he was dead. She's now shot Paul in the head, his brains have went all over the place, he's dead. So she then goes and helps Archer, she shoots the crackhead in the head, he dies, of course. Archer then goes into the basement. Meanwhile, Justine is out looking for Alex, I assume, in the house. So, what ends up happening? Is that... Oh my god, that's not what happened. God damn, I keep messing up. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Forgive me. Please forgive me. Scrap that. After she kills the crackhead, Justine then goes back into the kitchen to kind of mourn the death of Paul. This is why I think they used to be together. She's like mourning the death. She's like, oh, what have I done? What have I done? Meanwhile, Archer is in the basement and he's like pushing all the kids out of the way, looking for his kid. And he ends up, we're like in a first person point of view here, where he's like shining the flashlight. It's as if we're doing it on all these kids. Oh, that's not my kid. That's not my kid. And he shines it to a certain area. And Gladys, oh my god, that's the name, Gladys. Awesome. Isn't it? No, fuck it, forget it. Gladys is crouched in the corner and she looks round and she runs towards the camera. And what she ends up doing is she ends up ripping off Archer's chain. Okay, so now she has something of his, which we all know what her having a belonging to someone else can make them do. Which, I was confused, which I'll get into that at the end because it kind of drifts you away from the story. So I'll finish the story and then I'll get to that. Ends up possessing Archer, and Archer walks into the kitchen and he puts Justine in this like sleeper hold. And he's choking her out, and not Justine, Gladys comes in, and meanwhile, upstairs, Alex is still running away from his parents. They're like trying to break into the room. And what he ends up doing is grabbing this like stick, which it turns out comes off of this like plant, this magic, evil plant. So he grabs the stick, runs into the bathroom, and he also grabs Gladys's wig. Turns out the orange hair wasn't actually her real hair, she's actually bald. And what he does, as you can all expect, is he gets a strand of her real hair off the inside of the wig, wraps it around the stick because he's seen her do it so many times, and he snaps the stick. And what ends up happening is all the kids from the basement then lock onto Gladys and start running towards Gladys. Then we get into this other kind of comedy sequence where Gladys is like slowly running through random people's houses. Like she opened a family's house and she ran in. And she ran through the dining room and through the living room, through the kitchen, and then out the back door. And the family was looking around, all confused. And then all the kids start busting through the glass and the doors and running through and jumping over the tables and over the couches and running through and bursting through the glass door again. And she done that for like 2 houses or 3 houses or something, where... Oh, and she also done it at a part where she ran screaming in the distance and this guy was mowing his lawn and he looked up and he was like, that's strange. And then all the kids ran after her and he was like, that's also strange. So, just this like little comedy, which again, I've not got a problem with. I would just rather not see it in horror movies where I want to be scared. So, the kids end up catching up to her and they are ripping her to pieces, like literally ripping her arm and her fingers off and ripping her legs off and digging into her stomach. And one of the kids like grabs her mouth like this and opens it like that, which kills her. And as soon as Gladys dies, everyone who is possessed, who is alive, all the kids and Archer then wake up. Archer drops Justine and he then just gets back to what he was doing. He just goes and looks for his kid again. Justine is just panting on the ground. She's alive. She didn't get choked to death or nothing. She didn't even get choked out, surprisingly. She survived being choked for like 10 minutes straight. Anyway, Gladys is dead. Archer is out looking for his kid and he comes across all the kids and Gladys's body, or her dismembered body. And he looks and he finds his kid Matthew, and Matthew's just standing there like this. All the kids they're still possessed for some reason. They're just not attacking Gladys anymore, but they're still like under her little spell of they can't speak or walk around willingly and stuff like that, right? So Archer picks his kid up and the movie kind of ends from this little kid narrating saying the kids were still unable to move or fucking whatever it was, some of the kids this year gained back the ability to speak, and some of the kids started speaking this year. And that's where the movie ends. I am out of breath. The movie itself was a great idea. You know, a woman doing all this witchcraft, possessing all these different people and weaponizing them, essentially using them as weapons. Which I loved that whole aspect to it. I think it could have been executed better, like if she would have made people attack more people throughout the movie. Like, okay, let me possess this guy and make him attack that person. Let me possess this guy and make him attack all those people. And I feel like it would have just made for more of a horror movie. But like I mentioned, I think what did I give it at the start? An 8.5 out of 10 or something like that. I stand by it. I think it was a very good movie. I'd highly recommend going to watch it. However, don't go in fully expecting to be scared, because you're not going to be. You're going to be laughing at some parts too. That's it. That's my review on Weapons.